Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on this May 17th. Can I get a motion to go into special session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. First, we have approval of an ordinance, tax rates beginning July 1, 2022.
Madam Mayor, I hereby move for the approval of an ordinance on May 17, 2022 to establish the city's tax rates for the fiscal year July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023 on the basis of $1.002 for $100 of assessed value of all real property, excluding properties designated as apartments, which will be $1.032 for $100 of assessed value and $2.505 for $100 of assessed value of all business personal property within the city of Hagerstown. These rates are the same as current FY22 rates.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Approval of an ordinance budget fiscal year 22-23.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I hereby move for the approval of ordinance on May 17, 2022 to adopt the city's budget for fiscal year July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023 in the amount of $171,228,770.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving into our work session, we have a proclamation for Lyme Disease Awareness Month. So with us today, we have Ashley Baker. If you'd like to join me up here.
I think it's closer to the steps.
So I do have a proclamation for Lyme Disease Awareness Month. Whereas Lyme disease is an inflammatory disease characterized at first by a rash, headache, fevers, and chills, and later by possible arthritis and neurological and cardiac disorders. Lyme disease is spread through the bite of an infected tick, and ticks can be so small and hard to detect that many people who contract Lyme disease do not recall being bitten. Lyme disease can affect the brain, heart, joints, and other body organs, and mimics many other diseases. Some patients do not develop the characteristic rash, and symptoms may not appear for months to years following initial infection. From 2000 to 2018, there were 25,725 total cases confirmed in the state of Maryland, of which 943 were in Washington County. Prompt treatment and adequate antibiotic therapy in early stage infection cures almost all cases. However, lack of early recognition, diagnosis, and treatment can result in permanent physical damage, disability, or death. Now therefore, I, Emily Keller, Mayor of the City of Hagerstown, do hereby recognize and proclaim May 2022 to be Lyme Disease Awareness Month and encourage all citizens to increase their awareness of Lyme disease. So Ashley, thank you for all that you do for this, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really thankful to be here today. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease about 4 years ago, and it's been a very difficult journey for me. I lost both my jobs. I had to start my life over. It was a really hard time. And living in an area like Maryland, you're exposed to ticks all the time. So I just want to take this moment, this proclamation that Mayor Keller had the privilege of doing today. I just want y'all to take this serious and to just take precaution out there. This isn't just about now, this is about future generations, your kids' kids. People are walking around with a lot of misdiagnoses, and a lot of people are sick, missing out on school, work, and living their life because of these small little ticks that people are unaware of. So I just want to encourage all of you to take precaution, especially right now in the peak of tick season, and to just definitely don't settle for your doctors trying to not take you serious or dismiss you if you have a chronic illness. Everybody has a voice, and Lyme disease is definitely an issue out here. So thank you all for listening. Please watch out for ticks, and thank you again, Mayor Keller.
Eric's coming.
Yeah, he's coming.
See, that TV does pull out.
And it goes swivel. It feels like it.
All right, up next we have the Preservation Awards. We have Mr. Steve Moeller with us today.
Okay. All right, good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. My name is Steve Bachmiller. I'm with the Department of Planning and Code Administration. I'm also the staff to the Historic District Commission. I would like to ask our chairman, Mike Gear, to step up as well. May is Historic Preservation Month, and each year the HDC selects various projects around the city, not necessarily subject to their specific review authority, that helps promote historic preservation within the city. From year to year, the number of awards that we have kind of fluctuates. Sometimes we only have a couple, other times we have a bumper crop. This year we have an extra bumper crop. We have 10 awards to give out this year, and we'll work our way through them. I have one name per award as a person officially receiving it. However, it's very possible that you may have brought more than one person. That's perfectly fine. So when you come up, if you just identify everybody who's up at the podium, that would be great. The first one we're going to start with is the log cabin on Jonathan Street. This is a building that was constructed in the 1700s of materials that apparently were salvaged from a building that was actually built in the 1600s. It was discovered actually during a demolition process, and it was turned around instead and restored by Preservation Maryland, and it's now been turned into a single-family residence once again. Preservation Maryland wanted to recognize Ziegler and Sneed, Simpson, Gumtertz, and Higger Incorporated, and Worcester Eisenbrand Incorporated, who also assisted them with the project. Representing Preservation Maryland here today is Laura Houston, their Historic Preservation Redevelopment Manager. Come on up.
Okay, good smiles. 1, 2, 3. Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you very much. Number 2 on our parade of awards this afternoon is the Heiser Mansion Wine Cellar at City Park. This is on city property at City Park. Part of the historic development of that property, originally it was constructed as a farm. The house dates back to the 1840s. And Mr. Heiser, who built it, had vineyards on the property, and this was his wine cellar. It was starting to show its age and in need of repair, and the city arranged for a masonry company to come in and basically rebuild the facade of it and do a lot of repointing, and also shore up the barrel vault roof, brick roof that's on the inside. If you go inside that gate, it goes back 25, 30 feet or so. It's about 20 feet wide. It's actually a fairly large space. But it was a brick arched roof that's covered over by dirt, and that was actually starting to deteriorate as well. So this has been conserved and should be good to go for many years to come. And for that, we want to bring up City Engineer Rodney Tissue. Okay. Next item on the plate is 603 Oak Hill Avenue. This property, if you're not familiar with it, is because for the last 20 plus years, it's been hidden behind a very large evergreen wall. The owners, Brendan Fitzsimmons and the Vincent and Barbara Grow Permanent Charitable Trust, invested a lot of money in doing renovations and restorations to the house. They also took out the immense green wall and installed new fencing and also new landscaping. So now as you come down Potomac Avenue from the north part of the city, this is a major feature that you can see today, which was very hard to see up until recently. And representing the organization is Katie Grove Fitzsimmons. Okay. Not all historic preservation projects involve doing something with a specific historic resource. In this particular case, the next award is going again to the city of Hagerstown for the work on Hatters Plaza and the Cultural Arts Trail extension to West Washington Street at 45 West Washington Street. To give you a little bit of background, the building that was there up until a few years ago was constructed in the 1830s and had an addition put on the third floor, or created a third floor in the 1850s. But its time had come, it was unsalvageable at this point, it did need to come down. The Historic District Commission was a bit concerned with having another opening in the street walls, and they asked the staff to come up with some sort of idea to help, if it's going to be an open space, to still help define the front opening of that space within the street wall. And we came up with the idea of basically creating an approximation of the original constructed front facade, the first 2 stories before the third floor was added in the 1850s. And that way it helps define the space from the street, but also in and of itself, it helps serve as an educational tool for the for explaining the history of the site to those who are visiting. And if you notice, we even got into some details. If you notice, the red arrow connecting the photograph on the right was taken around 1862. It was up to Graff's Hattery. He had a large 3-dimensional top hat shaped sign, and we incorporated that into part of the design of the replacement as well. And for that, Rodney Tissue, city engineer. Okay, and again, they don't always involve a historic resource. In this particular case, the next awardee is Pentex Ventures for a project they brought to our downtown, a much-needed retail and food store in the form of a Dollar General. As everyone is, I'm sure, quite aware, Dollar General has a certain template to their corporate architecture. But in this particular case, they did work with the city to come up with something that fits in more with our multi-story streetscape. This is actually required by our zoning ordinance, and the developer also worked with us to do so. The building is actually a 1-story building, but it gives the appearance of being a 2-story building and fits within the streetscape, and replaced a mid-20th century 1-story building on that location. And representing Pentex Ventures today is Tracy Horstman. Next award is going to go to Richard and Rebecca Owens, who are the new owners of 235 North Potomac Street. This is a building that was built as a dwelling, but was later converted into offices and a religious sanctuary. Recently, they purchased it, went to the Board of Zoning Appeals for certain approvals, and converted the building into a 4-unit apartment building, which they loved so much they decided to turn the 2 upstairs units into their own dwelling as well. But this is a building in one of our residential districts, and returns what was a residential building into from its repurposed use back into a residence. So, Mr. and Mrs. Owens.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Okay. The next project is 202 South Prospect Street. This is on the corner of West Baltimore and South Prospect Street. The house was taken back over by a bank a couple years ago, and it was actually secured to make sure there wasn't any invasion to it. The bank actually did an excellent job as far as security goes. They put large metal plates over most of the windows and doors. But ultimately, the property was bought by Sarah Perry, who brought the property back online as her residence. It's been doing a lot of work to it ever since, both site location improvements like new fencing that's better compatible with the historic district, and also general renovations to the house, which are ongoing. Ms. Perry.
Okay, it's on 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Next item on the parade is the Moeller Organ Factory. Everybody's familiar with this building, and in recent years it was purchased by Moeller Properties LLC. And over that time, they have been preparing the building for reoccupancy and for marketing to put it back into use. As you can see, the before picture on the right and the after picture. A lot of times curb appeal is what's necessary to find an investor to take interest in a property, so they have this property well positioned to be brought back online into another use in the near future. And with that, we have Aaron Pentex.
Good smiles. 1, 2, 3.
Next item on the list of awards for this year is the Moeller Mansion at 441 North Potomac Street. This was at one time the residence of the gentleman who built that factory we saw on the last screen. For a number of years, it's been a multifamily building. It's had some problems over the years, but in recent times, it came into possession of Hagerstown Properties LLC that has been putting a fair amount of work into making the property more appealing to the street and also to potential tenants. And with that, I'd like to ask Stephen Owens to step forward. Okay.
Teamwork makes the difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
I'm just gonna roll out.
1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2.
And can we get one for this camera? Good smiles and 1, 2, 3. Okay.
And last but not least, number 10 on our list today is 465 North Potomac Street. This is a project that kind of flies under the radar a little bit because sometimes some of the most important work is something that doesn't really result in a net change other than condition. And this is one of those projects where the side of the building, there was starting to be problems with the paint and the surface of the brick masonry, and the windows were in need of repair. And Andrew Dorham, the property owner, he initiated a program to do masonry repairs and painting and window repair on the north side of his house, which is the primary visible facade of the house from the street, because of course Potomac is southbound at that location, and this is the north side of the house, so you see it on the right. And I drive by this one every day, and I didn't notice, but the good thing is that working right next door in the architect's office is the chairman of our commission, and he noticed it. So sometimes things that don't necessarily show up on the radar are just as important as flashy projects. So with that, Mr. Durham.
Okay, good fun, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm out of certificates. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have the longest preliminary agenda review ever. I'm gonna just,
You might want to tell folks they don't have to stay unless they have a vested interest. Oh, okay, there they go.
Oh my goodness, it is long.
I can't imagine why they wouldn't want to stay through this, but.
Oh, not even.
all right, we will have our regular session May 24th, call the meeting to order at 7, have an invocation given by somebody, we'll figure out, pledge to the flag. Takesha.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll be following the rules of procedure effective December 15, 2020. We have a couple appointments to the Historic District Commission and Board of Code Appeals. Then we'll have our citizen comments. You can provide comments in person or send an email to councilcomments@hagerstownmaryland.org no later than 5 p.m. on Tuesday. We have 2 public hearings, the OSIC Local Conversion District Overlay and the Surrey LLC Conversion District Overlay. We'll have approval of the minutes and a consent agenda for engineering. We have tree canopy assessment for $13,970. Funkhauser Park restroom access and water diversion for $42,930. For finance, we have utility billing processing and mailing for $192,000. Human resources specific stop loss insurance annual premium for $378,936. City-sponsored life insurance for $33,950, administration of dental coverage for $43,956, administration of medical coverage for $299,048, employee assistance program annual premium for $9,494. Under IT, we have Munis accounts receivable API interface for $18,879, and Article of IT security software package for $48,579.93. For Police Department, we have the Street Camera Project Phase 5 for $95,140. Public Works, Open Container Exemption and Application Permit for Juneteenth event, University Plaza, June 17th, 18th, and 19th. For 2023 F-750, Gas Regular Cab, and Stainless Steel Dump Body Salt Spreader and Snowplow for $162,993. And July 4th Fireworks at Fairgrounds Park for Starfire Corporation for $25,000. Under Utilities Light, we have Vegetation Management Fiscal Year 22 Blanket Extension for $40,000, Vegetation Management Blanket Contract for $331,600, Line Work Services Blanket Contract for $250,000, Substation Maintenance and Repair Fiscal Year 22 Blanket Extension for $40,000, Consulting Services GDS Associates for $75,000, Substation Maintenance and Repair Blanket Contract for $150,000, Emergency Purchase 1 Triplex Conductor for $39,000, MillSoft Productivity Software for $70,275, Electric Equipment Refurbishment for $50,000, Emergency Purchase Wood Utility Poles for $29,160.35, for Wastewater Administration Building Emergency Repair for Foundation Water Intrusion for $17,500, Wastewater Treatment Plant Chemical Purchase for $23,130. Wastewater Treatment Plant Replacement of Waste Activated Sludge and Scum Pumps for $84,914. Wastewater Treatment Plant Chemical Purchase Menthol for $79,200. Wastewater Treatment Plant Equipment SCADA Upgrade for $68,738. Pump Station Improvements Wet Well Lining for $76,400. For water, we have preventative maintenance agreement on chlorine equipment, $10,475. Street patching contract extension for $357,339, and polymer for $41,400. For unfinished business, we have approval of a charter amendment resolution, repeal and reenact with amendments of Charter 7, Section 717, approval of an ordinance zoning map amendment, Eklund Local Conversion District Overlay Zone. For new business, we have approval of resolution, non-exclusive license agreement with the Korean War Veterans Association, Antietam Chapter Number 312 for use of the city-produced Korean War movie. Approval of a resolution, user agreement with the Hagerstown area summer swimming for use of Potterfield Pool. Approval of a resolution, user agreement with the Monocacy Aquatic Club for use of Potterfield Pool. Approval of resolution, user agreement with Cumberland Valley Model Yacht Club for use of Lower Lake at City Park. Approval of a resolution converting Brown Avenue to one-way eastbound. Approval of a resolution, developers agreement for Kerwood Development. Approval of a resolution, renewal of memorandum of understanding with Washington County Department of Social Services, Adult Protective Services. Approval of amendment to fiscal year 22 CDBG Annual Action Plan, creation of new activity for Funkhauser Park sidewalk and accessibility. Approval of Indian Lane to a competitive negotiated sale list, and approval of IBEW contract. Then city administrator comments, mayor council comments, and we'll adjourn. Any questions?
We'll be here all night.
Can I do that again?
We need a meal.
All right.
I have, Mayor, I
What?
have two questions.
Yes, great.
Let me go back. The first one is, I marked it, okay, here we go. Various water CIP, it's crossed out, so it just says various. And then it has estimated water operating 150,000, estimated water capital 182,325, estimated light, estimated wastewater. Just if somebody could detail what that is.
Bill?
I just, if somebody could detail what that specific item is. Just a brief summary.
Come on up to the table.
He doesn't know which one he's talking about.
That one. Well, it's got like numbers the numbers have changed. And
Yes.
I'm just trying to
There's
follow.
150,000 that was budgeted in the operating budget
Okay,
initially. The cost of asphalt increased significantly, causing the overall price to go up. So the majority is gonna come out of the CIP. That's for work, that's for new work. Any new work that we do, any new main installation, the patching of the road afterwards comes out of the CIP. Any repairs, any main repairs, any leaks comes out of the operating budget. There probably will have to be a transfer.
okay. So when I read this, and it says total value of project 357,339, and then I go down and it says Henson and Son, total amount 331,432. Are you saying that 331,432 is the old number?
Yes.
Okay, so their number would be updated as well?
Yes.
Okay, that was confusing me. I was like, well.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's
we
what
have-
that means at the bottom?
Yeah, we
is
don't-
If
we
you
don't-
went back to them,
Yes.
they'd have to update their numbers?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so I guess we're fine, and I get it, it just seems a little odd that, you know what I mean, we're like jumping this far forward, but it doesn't appear we're going back and asking all parties to update their numbers.
I understand.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
Because they may come back in 2022 and say, yeah, we're making the assumption that they're going to be higher than the 357.
Yes, I guess in the contract, it allows for one, or actually two increases based on the asphalt price. And that's essentially what we're doing. The
Yeah.
asphalt price went up significantly more than 20%,
Yeah.
which is what their increase is.
Yeah,
The
it just seemed
asphalt
like a
price.
big jump. It just seemed like a big jump to say, yeah, you can up it, but upping it 20% and not going back and giving the other
mean-
ones, I don't want to say a fair shake, but you know what I mean, another crack at it.
I mean, the option would be to put it back out on the street.
Right, no, I get that. I get that.
I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Contract is,
We're just assuming because they were higher then, they're gonna be higher now. Or
Right.
higher than the lower now.
right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna hold up anything, I get it.
Yeah, I guess we kind of felt as if typically we get two
Yeah.
legitimate bids.
No, I got you.
Yeah, and if we put it back out on the street, the one that we got from Huntsbury, it may even be higher, because
Yeah.
from the time they gave us that price to now, the asphalt price has
Oh, yeah.
increased again.
You know, I got you, I'm well aware, yeah. I'm seeing the
Go
same
to the pump
things.
every time, yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
okay.
thank you.
The second one is on the Kerwood Development roadway improvements. And this is just, maybe this is just a dumb question. Well, I get two questions. From the drawing and the agreement, I want to confirm our prior discussions that these are dualized.
Yes, it's all 4
Both
lanes.
roads, yeah.
Yes.
The second is, and I don't want to be like the county, but I'm just going to say it. Was there any benefit or consideration of any benefit to either of these locations here being roundabouts instead of signalized intersections?
Yeah, we talked about it at length, but the amount of truck traffic really
I got you.
causes a
So it didn't like out
roundabout
at
to be a
HCC where it's
problematic.
mostly cars.
Exactly.
I get it.
It's a totally
Okay.
different
That-
traffic dynamic.
Yeah, when we put that there and things operate the way they're gonna operate in terms of stacking, I just want the public, you know what I mean, to have an awareness. And then that
Yeah.
brings up the third question is somehow, some way, this boulevard here is supposed to tie in at some point, right?
Yes. So
And-
this diagram on the back
Right.
shows you how that could happen in the future.
Yeah, it shows it how it could, and I guess, and I asked this same question when we had this initial discussion, is when it shows how it could happen, is that assumed to be a roundabout at that point?
Yes,
Okay. All right.
yes.
Because it
Where
won't be the
Edgewood
truck
would tie
traffic.
into Southern
Yeah.
Boulevard, yes.
I got you. Okay. Those are my questions, thanks.
Any other questions? Are we good on the agenda review? Good, okay. Next, we have IBW Union Contract.
Good questions.
John?
Hello again. So the city's negotiating team has come up with a tentative agreement with IBEW Local 307. It's a 2-year agreement. If the mayor and council so choose to approve it, it will cost the utilities fund, specifically the light fund, $78,915 for FY '23 and $47,143 for year 2. The actual contract is a 2-year contract. The wages for the first year will go up 3% for grades 5 through 12, and then for grades 14 through 17, it'll go up 7% the first year, and it's 3% across the board the second year. There was a slight classification guide change, nothing specific and nothing that cost any money. There were several small changes within the contract, but the lion's share of the change will be in the salary. Much of the language was fairly well established. It's an old contract, and it's a small contract, so we didn't see any real need to change it. My thanks to Nathan and the rest of the folks that were on the negotiating team on the management side, as well as Local 307, who came to the table prepared to negotiate, and they did just that. They were tough, but they weren't unreasonable, so it worked out pretty well. Any questions? Then I will be back next week, I guess, or the week after, which is, I guess it's next week, yeah, to watch you formally approve, hopefully.
Thank you for your work on this. All right, fiscal year '23 budget review.
I have a lot of questions today.
Good afternoon. Seems like we should just skip us this evening since we've already approved the budget. Is that what you're going to say?
I have a lot of questions today.
Do I got a 5 on that?
Yeah, I would say you definitely had one vote.
Wow. Harsh crowd. We'll keep the budget portion, seriously, really short, because we do very much appreciate that you were willing to do the introduction last week and the adoption this week, and to pass the budget without making a very tedious detail out of making lots and lots of changes, since we spent so much time trying to get it balanced the first time through. But before we get to budget, I do have one other item I just need to mention, and that is, I had originally, several weeks ago, came and talked about a reprogramming of a 2019 tax exempt bond. And originally, we thought we were going to need to do introduction and ordinances followed by, in June, a resolution. But it turns out, our 2019 bond, we already previously, in that bond, had public works vehicles. And since we're purchasing a public works vehicle, and in our original bond documents, we had flexibility to reallocate money across those original projects. We don't need further documentation and votes. So one of the items that was on the preliminary agenda and will be voted on next week is actually that vehicle for public works contract. So no further action is needed on that. One less meeting for me, there you go. Up first, I think we're gonna do just like we did last week. We're gonna jump around in between the funds, and we're gonna look at the capital improvement projects first. So in section 7 on page 2, before we talk about the whole entire capital improvement program, I think it was important for us to stop a moment and take a look at the city's strategic plan. And so the strategic plan is mentioned in various places throughout our document, but one of the places where we can see it summarized more and actually see dollars put with each of your priority items is in this section. Now, the dollars that's included under these items are strictly that, just capital, but every single item and every single priority item is reflected not just in the capital budget, but within the operating side. So again, on pages 2 and 3, this is one of the few places you will see, like the very first priority, neighborhoods, revitalization and sustainability. We have about $625,000 in the capital improvement program that fits underneath here. And it's really difficult for us when we're looking at this because we have so many projects and we're trying to just pick one. But again, this is a very good portion of the document that is often overlooked, but I wanted to make sure that we stopped long enough that everybody knew it was there and was familiar with the priority projects. Next, we'll talk about specifically, we'll look at general fund capital projects and look at funding sources. So on page 15, there's a report of total projects in the general fund by funding source. A couple that I just want to stop and mention, and it's items that we've already reflected on earlier throughout. But the first one is ARPA, or American Rescue Plan Act recovery dollars. In the fiscal year 23 capital improvement projects, we have about $2 million to $2.1 million that we plan on using and utilizing for capital projects. A couple more down, it says CIP/GF fund balance. That is where we are reallocating and repurposing prior year fund balance reserves, and we're utilizing $3.5 million. Talked about that, it was in another chart in the very beginning. But again, worthy of mentioning. And then if you flip the page, you'll notice page 16 and 17, there's various different types of grants. There's our cable and our PEG fee money that's restricted from the cable franchise agreement. We get a portion that is franchise dollars, and that's in our operating, but then there's also a portion that's PEG and INET, and it is restricted for capital purposes. So that's what's reflected on page 17 under PEG fees for $50,000. We have the prior, right underneath it, the prior bond proceeds, $170,000. And again, that is the item that we were talking about earlier about reprogramming the bond money for in the vehicle that you're voting on later next week. And then if you flip the page, it starts on page 18, goes to page 19. Transfers to the CIP from the general fund, sometimes we call pay-go monies, but it's at $2.1 million for fiscal year 23, which is substantially higher than what it's been in prior years. And then the grand total at the bottom, 15.7, almost $15.8 million that we're looking at doing in general fund projects across general fund, and for the majority, we're doing it without new bond issuances, which is amazing. going to look at just several of the projects, and again, the way that I'm picking it is just by highest dollars. So on page 48, up first, we have our pavement preservation program. This is an ongoing program that Rodney does an excellent job with. We utilize all the money that we spend in here to continue to pave all of our streets across the city. We rely on highway user revenue fees, and you'll see again that that's what we're doing in fiscal year 23 for about 1.3 million. I'm gonna skip and go to page 49. And on page 49, you're gonna see the Hagerstown Field House. I know we talked about it briefly at one of our other meetings. In fiscal year 23, we only have $750,000, but you'll see the rest is included in fiscal year 24. So our total project, we're estimating to be at 22 million. Again, some of that we're gonna fund 2.2. We've already transferred over the city local dollars, so we have that investment. We've already received money from the state, 3 million over 2 years. So we have several funding sources, and we're steadily working towards that, and continuing our next phases so we can get to construction. Page 63, Fire Department Training Center. And so this is just pretty much everything over at Bowman Avenue, but in the fiscal year 23 budget, we did include money for a new burn building module. It's about $1 million, and we're getting $500,000 again. We're very fortunate. We're getting $500,000 again from the state. So $500,000 from the state and $500,000 of our own local dollars to do that very much needed upgrade. On page 92 is a professional court extension or professional court boulevard, and this would only pertain and reflect our portion of that project from Bridge 92. I'm trying to go quickly, I'm sorry. Don't want to go past it. Professional court extension, again, this is just the city's portion. This, of course, is a much larger project that the county is doing another portion from the bridge further. $3 million total for city project, and we're doing that with some ARC, Appalachian Regional Grant monies, along with some ARPA money and city local bond, or city local funds that we've already set aside for that. So $3 million, and everything is on track and progressing very nicely there. On the very next page, 93, we don't have a very catchy title. It's just called Consolidation of Public Safety Assets. But once again, this is another look back to the fire department. And in fiscal year 23, we have $1 million in here, fund balance reserves. We're hoping the $1 million will cover the acquisition of 2 separate locations, as well as the design of 1 location for a new fire station. That's page 93. And then last is page 103. And again, the title of the project is kind of vague, but it's called Downtown Redevelopment. And literally the only thing in here is the 32 North Potomac Street. So we purchased that and had the acquisition of $825,000 that occurred in fiscal year 22. And we, at this point, have anticipated about $1.3 million additional in renovation. Some of that will be American Rescue Plan Act monies, and the bigger portion will, of course, be fund balance reserves.
Okay, so then moving on to the parking fund, page 36 lists parking fund projects by funding source.
So in the same section,
Section 7.
looking at just CIP.
Projects included in FY23 include the 3rd parking deck, upgrades to parking decks, parking fund vehicles, and parking lot improvements. $5.5 million will be bond funded as part of a $10 million bond. $347,000 will be coming from the parking fund for a total of $5,847,000 in FY23. The most significant project in the parking fund is the 3rd parking deck, which is on page 163 of section 7.
We're keeping you awake. This is an interactive course.
No wonder this thing's for before.
You know, if we did this on the slides, we would just be reading a slide this way.
163.
Right. It's
fun game.
167.
163.
Bible study.
Yeah, bingo.
All right, got it.
Okay, so this is a $10,217,000 project over FY '23 and FY '24. FY '23, $5,717,000, which includes land acquisition, design, and construction. 5.5 million bond funded again, 217,000 from the parking fund. What do you say? Oh, okay. For the bond portion, based on a 25-year term at 4.25%, the preliminary annual debt service impact for the FY '23 bond issue of $10 million is $638,100.
So again, that's a rough estimate, but we include that information there because it's very important, and we'll see that come into play when we look at the projections. Now, for kicks and giggles, we're going to make you flip back.
So let's see, back to page 42, we'll look at Stormwater Protection Fund. Projects for FY '23 include stream restorations, storm drain system upgrades, curb replacement program, reforestation, and reforestation. 200,000 would be part of a federal grant. The remaining will come from stormwater fees for a total of $1.4 million. Jim Bender has a presentation here shortly, so he'll go over the CIPs.
So we don't want to
Twice.
duplicate that for you.
And
So
how
we're
was
going
all
to
this,
skip the
how was it
details.
all paid for?
Stormwater
On
fees.
the stormwater side?
Mm-hmm, and then a $200,000 grant.
Right.
And even in the out years, so in the next 4 years that we have projected, fiscal year '24 through '27, there's no, at this point, no anticipation that we would need to issue a bond to actually complete those projects.
But this just goes to show that that stormwater charge is going towards these projects.
Yes. Yes. See, now I don't need to do the financial projection statement, because Scott's already covered that. But next, we will flip just real quick to the financial projection section, which is section 6. And I'll have you go to the parking fund, and it is reflected on page 25. And if you remember last week, we talked about electric, water, and wastewater. The layout of the columns is exactly the same. So when you get to page 25, you're going to see 2 years of history, fiscal year 20 and 21. You're going to see the current fiscal year 22. You're going to see budget numbers and estimated actual. And in the middle, you're going to see our fiscal year 23 proposed budget, along with 4 years additional projections, fiscal year 24 through fiscal year 27. So in the middle column in fiscal year 23 budget, you'll notice at the very top, total parking deck revenue. And come down to where, in the middle, where it says total operating revenue. So that's $854,000. Expenses, a little over $704 with some depreciation thrown in. And once we consider depreciation, that means we are anticipating that the parking fund will have an operating loss. And then clear at the bottom, after we take in a couple other transfers, we anticipate that it's going to be a deficit, so of about $207,000 in the fiscal year 23 budget. Flip the page. And again, that's one of the numbers we concentrated on last week, so that's the deficit. If you look at page 26 towards the bottom, you see the net surplus deficit there. That is a reflection of the change in cash. So if we move forward with the parking deck, what looks a little odd here is we say we're going to have a deficit on one hand, but on the next page we say we're going to increase our cash by almost $4 million. That is only if because when we move forward with a bond issue in a project, we need the bond completed and the money before we move forward with the project. So this is a reflection of that part of that money would come in fiscal year 23 before all the construction and the costs start being spent. If you flip back to page 25, though, I think one of the key things as you look in the out years, under total parking deck revenue, you'll see right above the subtotals, the third parking deck, and we've estimated, let's see, the parking deck was about 380 spaces. Maybe 280 is available for public and paying customers. And assuming that maybe 50% of those 280 are used on a daily basis, plus some additional dollars for the stadium in fiscal year '25 would be the first full year. We're hoping to achieve $228,000 in revenue from that deck. And as you can see,
It's less
when you
than
see
your debt
above,
service.
right, it's, that's a very aggressive, right? And then halfway down the page, when you see operating expenses, right in the middle, you'll see parking deck 3, anticipated and estimating $206,000 in expenses. And really, all that I'm doing there is assuming and looking at our other 2 parking decks and looking at our history and taking an average. Because even though this is new, we're going to have operating expenses in order.
Yeah, I mean, that's assuming that everything works out perfect, your 206 is gonna offset the 207. You'll be
Correct.
back to 0.
Correct, until you come to the next page, when we actually pay out for the construction part. So as you look in the out years, when you get to fiscal year '24, '25, you're gonna see huge changes in cash flow, right? And it's kind of what we've been saying, it's really difficult to find grant dollars or monies to pay for parking decks. It's a lot of times hard for those in the private industry to just do a single parking deck because it takes significant time to actually recoup and have a positive cash flow. Because once you do all this, you also then have that debt, the principal and the interest that you're paying on your bond. Just like if you bought a new house and you were paying a mortgage. Only it takes a while and all the other costs, plus what you're paying out on that loan to start to recoup some of that. So if that's the case, we could potentially have negative cash flow by fiscal year '27. But again, you start to get a little further out, the goal would be that you would start to see that turnaround.
Yeah, I think that it's important for all of the partners and parties that have an interest with the city in accomplishing this parking deck is not only to look at those numbers, but the out year impact it has on the city and the prior year estimation escalation that we've seen. And I'll just use this example. If you go to section 7-163 where you're at, and you see that we've got a deck now that's at $11 million for 350 to 400 spaces. If you recall, 5 years ago when we were doing similar analysis, we were at a deck at around $8 million for about 450 spaces. So the space cost escalation in just that 5 years has went from $17,000 to $20,000 a space to build a deck to about $27,000 to $30,000 a space to build a deck. So just in 5 years, it's went up 30%, just the cost to construct that thing. And then you take it back to the operations, and you see that, you know, that we've got to like make that work, that we're borrowing the money, spending the money, and then immediately making the money to cover the cost of that deck, and then going into the negative for the first 3 or 4 years.
Probably
until-
longer.
Right, until we ramp up. I'm being optimistic. You know what I mean?
I'm thinking 10, but.
Until we ramp up and pay down other things.
Right.
Every year that gets pushed out, that cost escalation goes up, and our duration of recoup gets further out. And not only that, but you look in the middle of page 25, you'll see prior year interest rates of 2.5% on some of these investments, and this one's at 3.5%. And then we just heard, less than a month ago that the feds are looking at increasing rates. That 3.5% is a locked-in number for a very finite period. So everybody out there that wants to be partners in this process to get this moving forward, be very clear the risk that we're taking and the gamble we're taking at this moment is a different risk and gamble and price point 6 months from now, 12 months from now. So if everybody wants to get on board now is the time to make this happen, or those numbers are going to change just a year from now to the negative.
The feds just raised, what, 2% this last time, which was a huge increase. Huge. Yes. We'll finish out the year with stormwater, and again, we don't want to take too much from Jim. On page 32, we'll just jump right to fiscal year '23 budget in the middle. And actually, I'm just gonna come the whole way. In the middle of the page, it says increase, decrease. We're currently anticipating 1.8 million surplus, but after some capital items and projects get done, only an increase of 400 at the very bottom, $454,000 in cash. But again, the goal when looking at what's happening in this fund, rates were locked in and the rates get locked in. The rates for stormwater are not on a fiscal year right now. They are on a calendar year, so they increase in January and they will go up January of 2023. They're currently $32 per 1,000 square foot of impervious surface. They will go to $34 per 1,000 square feet of impervious surface. And those were rates that we locked in and got approved for a 3-year cycle. The one thing that I am going to request of Rodney and Jim when they come back the next time, when rates are discussed, that we look at moving any potential increases or changes in rates to a fiscal year instead of just doing it on a calendar. But again, I don't want to give away too much because Jim has exciting stuff to tell you that's happening in stormwater. It's a new fund. It's built on your utility bills. You can pay it all the same ways that you currently pay everything else. If you do it through Invoice Cloud, a lot of choices. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have any?
Are you done once he comes up? You're not coming back up?
I'm not coming back.
Okay. I have one question and one comment. The first comment is, I know you had folks here earlier, and we did approve it, and I just want to say thanks for all the work you guys did on the budget. It's a huge document, complicated system, so we appreciate that. I know I do. And then the other one is, I know we discussed capital or enterprise funds last week, and so this question did come up offline from at least one individual where we talk about enterprise funds need to be self-supporting. We can't move money between funds, but if you look at the golf course fund in section 3, we clearly see that there's a movement. There has been historically, and so I know that we've debated that time and again. What is the rationale where we say we can move that within the golf fund, but we don't say that for the other enterprise funds?
So all the others are truly enterprise funds, right?
Right.
The golf course, we at the city, several years ago, many administrations ago, decided to create the golf course and segregate it and make it its own fund and label it as an enterprise fund. So our bond rating agency and even our auditors don't technically consider the golf course an enterprise fund. It is more like any other recreational or any other amenity that we have under the general fund, very similar to Carter Field Pool. It's the only reason why you see those transfers. If the golf course really truly was defined as a separate enterprise fund, I would not be transferring those dollars, and the rating agencies would seriously be having conversations. One of the things we've really considered, and as soon as we can honestly stop long enough to get there, we would really like to come back to this group and request that we dissolve that fund, not the golf course, the fund. Dissolve the fund and move it back into the general fund, because that's really
Move it back in the parks.
where it belongs, correct. Keeping everything else the same, just moving it out of the fund.
People pay for all kinds of park amenities. This happens to be one
That's
of
it.
those park
One more.
amenities. Right. Okay, thank
But they pay for the pool and everything.
Right.
Happy birthday, Michelle. Thank you.
32 again.
I know.
All right, a view of 11850 Indian Lane. I couldn't read the number for a second.
We're here to review 11850 Indian Lane for the possibility of adding the property to the city's competitive negotiated sale program with the goal of transferring the property to the private sector. A little bit of background on the property. It consists of 11.93 acres and is comprised as a farmette currently with a single-family dwelling unit and outbuildings, which you can find in your packet, some aerials and some exterior photos of the property. The approximate living space of the residential structure is 2,653 square feet. The property is currently zoned as agricultural transitional. And a unique feature about the property is actually has a cell phone tower on it, and the city receives rental income from the cell tower owner. The tower is subject to a recorded land lease agreement dated March 16, 2011, and the land lease agreement provides the cell tower owner has a right of first refusal to any bona fide offer to purchase the Indian Lane property. Just a little bit background on the competitive negotiated sale process. The process facilitates the sale of city-owned properties with the goal of transferring the property to the private sector for redevelopment and highest and best use. The City of Hagerstown makes real estate available for purchase and redevelopment. Department of Community and Economic Development coordinates the process and accepts purchase applications. And mayor and council identify properties to be offered for sale and ultimately approve any development concept and purchase. So there's two additional items if mayor and council would like to add this to the competitive negotiated sale process. Is staff propose a list price for the property of $675,000. That's the first consideration. The second would be if a buyer were to come forward with an agent to allow for 2.5% buyer's agent commission. We've previously offered this before as a suggestion from Penmar Realtors, and it creates motivation for realtors to show with their potential clients. So those would be the two considerations that we'd like to review in addition to the property going on the list.
And I'm sorry, what was the initial cost? You said $675?
Yeah, $675,000.
You guys go with that?
Yeah, just two quick comments. The first is it's a little unfortunate it did not, I think, work out, at least as, in my mind, the way I thought it would be juxtaposed next to or across the creek from the Kiwanis Park, because there is a significant elevation difference between the properties, more notable than when you just go out to the property and see it. It's, you know, it's very significant, even just about for the entire length. The second is, and I get it, you know, the direction is likely going to be to proceed with selling the property, but it would be unfortunate to lose the historic significance that at least a couple of the structures on that property have, you know, in that process. So, you know, obviously my hope is when we get to that point, it's somebody that recognizes the significance of those and you know, has an interest in retaining them.
Okay, let's do it.
You guys good?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. All right, we have illicit discharge ordinance. Jim? We're skipping that one today.
That'll come back on
Yeah.
in June.
The code amendments, we're moving.
Okay.
So good afternoon. I think hopefully Michelle didn't build this up too much, that I don't know how exciting this topic's going to be. But, so there are two separate stormwater-related items to present to you today. The first is the illicit discharge ordinance. We have a permit with the state of Maryland Department of the Environment that allows us to discharge stormwater into waters of the state. And one of the conditions of that permit is that we need to have regulations in place that will hopefully minimize or prevent what they call illicit discharges to the system. So it's different types of pollutants, oil, grease, pesticides, herbicides, that sort of thing. If we dug around enough in the city code, we probably have regulations at different places that already cover that, but the state is really pushing all the municipalities to adopt a separate sort of standalone ordinance that specifically deals with stormwater. So we worked with the city attorney to develop this ordinance. It's very similar to a number of other ones that you'll see around, one that Washington County passed. A lot of the language in there is sort of canned language that's come from other places in the state where they've done these ordinances. But basically what it says is the city engineer and his staff are responsible for enforcing this ordinance. It gives the city the right to investigate potential discharges of these pollutants into the storm drain system. Under certain circumstances, it gives us right of entry into properties to investigate if we suspect that something illicit is happening there. And there's also enforcement mechanisms in here so that if we do find something, we can give a warning notice, then a notice of violation, and then eventually it could be taken up as a criminal matter. And it lays out some of the proposed fine amounts in there. So this is, really, this is something that we're sort of being forced into by the state. Everyone that has one of these stormwater permits in the state is required to adopt some sort of ordinance like this. So this is our take on that.
I have to find some humor in this when I see these things. And I drive by the stacks of townhouses sitting right along the bay, built as close into the water as they can possibly make them, with folks with Save the Bay tags on their cars, washing them on the weekend, and watching the soap run down into them. It's just ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, that is one thing, a question that we got asked a lot is, if you're a homeowner, would you still be allowed to wash your car in your driveway?
Only if you live right next to the bay.
And that is exempted in this ordinance. Homeowners can still do that. Non-commercial car washing is still acceptable. So,
I have a comment. Is there a type like a PSA or like a media post to let everyone know what's not allowed?
we, at this point, no, that's something that we're going to be adding to the city's website, probably in the stormwater section. And we can probably work with Wes to push out, some sort of a notice or a notification on that. We just haven't put it together yet. I think we were wanting to get to this point, and then we can develop a plan for that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Are you guys good with that? Have any other questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Stormwater protection update.
Right. So we just want to take an opportunity to give you an update on what's happening with the stormwater protection program. So you remember the council approved the development of this program back in 2020, the spring of 2020. And as part of that, we were going to, as of July 1st of that year, we're going to start charging a stormwater protection fee. Because of the pandemic, that got delayed until the spring of 2022 or 2021. So the projects and things that we are planning on doing with the fee, or the money that's been collected through that fee, have been pushed back a little bit because we were late in starting to generate that fee coming in. But we have been able to do a few projects already, and we've got a list of projects both in fiscal year 23 and then in the out years that we're planning on doing. One of the things we do with the Stormwater Protection Fund is pay for the street sweeping operation that's been ongoing, and will continue to be ongoing, and hopefully, if we can, expand it. Unfortunately, the state doesn't give us very much credit for street sweeping as far as our stormwater permit, so it's disappointing in that regard. They're changing the regulations to hurt us more than help us, but it's still an important thing.
We went and bought another.
It's okay, it keeps our city clean.
Yeah.
That doesn't come down my street. I haven't seen it for some time.
It was on ours.
Comes down yours.
Yeah.
But it does, the street sweeping does help us at least partially meet our stormwater goals. One of the projects we were able to complete, sort of a small project, but at Hager Park, there was an existing storm drainage line that ran right through the middle of the park, and park staff discovered that it was basically collapsing or ready to collapse. And so we were able to use the Stormwater Protection Fund to pay for the replacement of that pipe and drainage structures out there. Another project that was completed recently with the stormwater funds is out at the BMX track. We put in a little bio-retention area, a stormwater treatment area. The stormwater fund paid for that. A big part of what we're using the money for on an ongoing basis is the curb replacement program around the city. As you remember, before we had the stormwater fund, the burden of repairing curbs and sidewalks was on the citizens. And through the fund and some commitments we made with the general fund to cover some of the sidewalk replacement, now all of that work is out of the direct responsibility of the residents. The city has taken that on. And so we, in the past fiscal year, spent about $100,000 on curb replacement, and we anticipate that that's going to be an ongoing, every fiscal year we're sort of budgeting around $100,000 of curb work. You may have noticed different places we've done some tree planting, and actually, part of this was stormwater funds, but a big part of it was working with the Maryland Forestry Service to do some forest plantings. Out here at the west end at the reservoirs, you'll notice that's what this photo in the memo is. Did some limited forest planting there, did planting down at the Wilson Treatment Plant at Williamsport, did some planting out at Smithsburg at the water treatment plant out there. And those plantings help to get us to meet our goal with the state because they give us credit for the trees that are planted or the forest that's created. And so looking ahead then, in this next fiscal year and in coming years, we've got several larger projects we're planning on doing. I think Michelle mentioned the stream restoration project at the golf course. The Hamilton Run flows through the golf course, but if you look at where it flows, it's obviously in an artificial channel that was created when the golf course was created. We're going to put it back, cut across the course, put it back into more of a natural channel state, and try to stabilize it. So that's a project that we're hoping to do, assuming we get the permits to do that this winter when the course is closed. We are also in the process of, we've got a final design for the retrofit of the MKS Business Park pond. That's the pond out off of Conrad Court, Opal Court, that the city acquired. We're going to retrofit it, add some water quality features, and that's going to earn us credits with the state as well for our permit. A couple other projects we're working on. We finished the design on West Hillcrest Road. We're going to narrow that street and add a stormwater facility there that, again, will get us some credits. There are a couple storm drainage projects around that we are studying right now. One is Morningside Heights. They've got some fairly significant drainage problems out there in that development. There's some drainage problems we want to address on Brookline Avenue and Interval Road. And possibly, it's a little bit bigger project, but East Urban Avenue and Magnolia Avenue, there's a pretty big drainage system up there that's undersized, and I think that that's something that we may try to tackle, make an improvement up there in the future. There's also the Columbia Gas investigation work. They were planning on coming to town and using video cameras to inspect all of our storm drains, at their cost. And what they were looking for is places where gas mains had accidentally been drilled through our storm drain pipes, and they want to eliminate those situations. But we see this as a great opportunity to get a handle on what our system really looks like, because it's parts of our system are over 100 years old. And
Somebody else's.
Right. Now, we do anticipate that we're going to find problems, that they're going to see things that need to be fixed, and then it's going to be on us to use the fund to come up with projects to address those. The other thing that I'd say, too, that we're doing, which unfortunately hasn't got as much traction as we had hoped, is we have an incentive program to help homeowners that are interested in doing some stormwater management, putting stormwater management facilities like a rain barrel or a rain garden on their property. We've got a cost-sharing program that we developed with the Washington County Conservation District. And we've had some interest in that, but not nearly as much interest as I had hoped. We're still trying to promote that. Actually, I had a call today from someone that may take advantage of that program. But I think maybe we need to do a better job of getting the word out that, there's this incentive program exists, it's available, and try to encourage people to, to participate, take part in it. So that's really it. Just wanted to give an update on what we've done basically over the past year and give you an idea of where we're headed.
See, that was exciting.
Thank you. Appreciate the update. City Administrator.
Just a few things, Mayor. I want to thank everybody that attended the opening of the Cultural Trail and the UIP. Rodney, those of you here that were able to attend, it was nice to have my wingman back for the first time in a month that was able to go with me. It's a beautiful space, and I look forward to having folks come here and utilize it. Also, a couple openings just to show you how things are moving along here in not only in downtown but in the rest of the city. The Foundry will have a grand opening at 14, the Foundry is the makerspace at 14 North Potomac on Friday afternoon, I think it's 1 o'clock, and then a grand reopening of the Mid-Atlantic Veterinary Clinic on Saturday at 10:30. The public will, I think, is getting access or tours, and fun stuff happens at 11. So we're running about, boy, 1 or 2 of these a week, it seems like now, and things are ramping back up, and it's pretty exciting. Also, National Police Week is winding up. I just want to thank all of our police staff, active and retired, for their service for the citizens of Hagerstown. It's a thankless job, and hopefully this is a little bit of recognition that they don't get enough of but truly deserve. Also on recognition, echo Councilman Alshire, thanking the Finance Department, all the senior staff, and everyone that participated in the budget process this year. It was not an easy one to put this book together. Certainly, probably one of the more difficult ones to get this balanced this year. Next year, given the uncertainty of the economy, COVID that never seems to want to go away, or that people will let go away, and other world events that affect the economy. Plus, it'll be our first year of the triennial assessment to see where that goes. It's kind of like a horror movie that you're waiting for something to pop out at you when you get that assessed value number. So next year could be an exciting year to try to put this budget together. But thank you all, council and the mayor, for your support through the process, and we'll start to work on next year's budget here in probably another couple weeks. Congratulations, we can start tomorrow if you want, Michelle. Congratulations to our recreation manager, Amy Riley, for being accepted into Class 36 of Leadership Washington County. As a Class 8 alumni, it's going to be the time of her life, and I know some of you, Councilwoman at McIntyre, and has anybody else been in? Donna? Donna was. I think
I was in
Rodney
leadership
never
at
was.
Hagerstown years ago before there was ever a leadership.
Really?
It was called Leadership Elizabethtown, I think, when Councilman Burchik did it. But she'll have a great time. It's a great opportunity for Amy. Lastly, music on the square this Friday night. Wild Whispers, a harmony folk group duo on the square, starting at 5:30 on Friday. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez? Councilmember Alshire?
2 comments, if I can remember. The first is about the assessment that Scott mentioned. I will stand by my comment in the paper, and I use this example that I find often, pretty much every year, that larger municipalities are at a disadvantage based on the way that the state criteria works. If your net change is more than 1%, then you're required to do all this rigmarole to advertise and put in specific language and make it appear that you're raising. And if you're not, if that change isn't greater than 1%, then you don't do anything. You just go through the motion of passing your budget and making the changes you need to make. And larger municipalities, frankly, because of the proportionate differences of their sheer numbers, often, almost always fall on the side of more than 1%, whereas small municipalities almost always fall on the side of less than 1%. And I just think that process and the way that the state requires a municipality to say that is an outdated process. It needs to be changed because it certainly does not reflect, the good order in which a lot of the budgets from those large municipalities are then developed and passed. I think if we had to do it that way and had to stick to that process, we would never be able to advance things forward the way that we do, especially for those larger municipalities, because you'd be in constant fear that that's what you have to say every time. And I wish somebody would look at that. The second item I wanted to say is congratulations to the folks for the preservation awards earlier. And I say that because I often make the comment, that I'm always focused so heavily on just the corporate boundaries of the city. And I also say the comment often that everybody A lot of times people don't notice the nice places when they drive down the street, but everybody knows that one place that doesn't look good. And so I use these two examples, on the street that I live on, Virginia Avenue. There have been recent improvements to two houses just down the street from me that happen to be outside of the city. And I just want to let those folks know that I do notice that Hagerstown's bigger than the lines that are drawn around it. And I just appreciate those folks in the greater Hagerstown area for making those improvements as well. And hopefully, they're recognized in something.
Thank you. Councilmember Burnett.
Kristen took all mine.
Kristen said.
Ditto.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to thank, I had the opportunity on Saturday to go to City Park and present a certificate to the Interact Club, which is sponsored by Kiwanis, Rotary. Sorry, my fault. Sponsored by Rotary. It is a group of middle school students that did a beautification project at City Park, and it's the youngest Interact Club that we have around here. So yeah, if you start, Kristen, I know takes his kids, you take your kids, you take your grandkids, you take your kid. So it's important to start at that young age, but this group of middle school students is out, helping to beautify the city park. It was really great to see that, and as Mayor Keller will probably say, there will be another opportunity on Saturday.
Thank you for that.
I didn't take your thunder.
Thank you.
Yep. Introducing.
Yes, yes. We can. So I'm actually going to start with something different, though. We've been all working really hard to try to change the perception of Hagerstown, to try to improve Hagerstown. We're seeing all kinds of positive changes. We just passed our budget tonight, as everyone has referenced, with no tax increase and things like that. And it's very hard to get information out to our citizens because we don't have a local paper anymore. And, we passed the budget primarily a couple weeks ago, and the headline was, Hagerstown, City of Hagerstown approves budget, but your tax bill may go up because of your housing values may go up. And then last week, we introduced the budget, and the headline was very similar. Hagerstown approves budget, but you still may see a higher tax bill. And it's really, really, really unfortunate that Herald Mail does that to us. And as hard as we all work, it's just really sad that every single headline they have to make negative. And I get it, if it bleeds, it reads, and it helps them sell virtual papers or whatever it is that they're doing now. But we work really, really hard to not have any media on our side. And to the producers or whatever editors at the Herald Mail, I really wish that you would start doing us some favors and highlighting some of the positive things that are happening in this town. I mean, the headline should have read, hey, Hagerstown City residents, your taxes aren't increasing this year. But instead, we still managed to make it negative. And it's frustrating. And I think there are 450 some employees in this place that work way, way, way too hard to be constantly discredited. So I hope that the community helps and all the messages that we put out start to be a little bit more positive instead of focusing on everything that is bad every single time. And speaking of something positive, we talked about this a lot. We did a community survey and we heard people were concerned about trash in our community. So we are doing our third community cleanup this Saturday from 9 to 12. From 9 to 9:30, we'll have bags and gloves in Central Lot and at Elgin Station. So if you don't have your own, feel free to come pick up some for free. We're asking you to just go out in your community, pick up trash. And if you would like to plant flowers to beautify downtown, Main Street will be planting flowers. You can meet us in the square at 9. Or if you'd like to stencil with spray paint the storm drains that have messages about only water goes into these drains, meet us also in the square at 9. So I hope that everyone listening and everyone that sees the press release and all of the promotions that we've done comes and is part of the change that we all wish to see. With that, I hope to see you at 9 a.m. Saturday, and we're adjourned.
They did such a good job last time, you guys should definitely help.
They just take our headshots along.
9 in the morning. Yes, I can do that because Ruby has her 8th grade dance Friday night, which means
Hello and welcome to Council Wrap. I'm Wes Decker, joined by Assistant City Engineer Jim Bender, the man of the hour, as it turned out from the meeting. I mean, have you ever been built up so much?
No, and I think it was very much misplaced, unfortunately. But yeah, I wouldn't say that the stormwater topics are necessarily the most exciting thing, but we have to share the information.
Yeah, no question about that. And I was a little worried myself because I thought, man, the way they're building this up, all of the good information is going to be disseminated during the meeting. There's going to be nothing left for Council Wrap. But let's see what we can do with this, starting with the illicit discharge. And I was saying to you right before we started, whoever came up with this, use the most menacing terms possible, terms that are very official, certainly get people's attention. So again, give us a little bit of background on what we're talking about there as illicit discharge, how it relates to the city of Hagerstown.
Sure. So the city has a permit through the state of Maryland that lets us discharge stormwater that ends up going downstream into Antietam Creek and the Potomac and Chesapeake Bay. And as part of that permit, the state is really trying to get municipalities to crack down on what they call illicit discharges, which are things that are getting into the stormwater stream that really shouldn't be. So it's oil, grease, pesticides, herbicides, paint, that sort of thing. And so the state really wants municipalities to go after that, to try to minimize that pollution. And in order to do that, the state wants municipalities to pass regulations or an ordinance that actually sort of codifies, here are the things that are not permitted, and here's how the municipality is going to go about trying to minimize those. And so really that's what this illicit discharge ordinance is. It's basically a mechanism that the city can use if we suspect that there's been some sort of a discharge, or if we think that something is going on that shouldn't be as far as the stormwater system. It gives us the ability to go in and investigate and hopefully stop whatever is going on.
Yeah, I know you talked about that a little bit during the meeting. What are the specifics when it comes to, policing this? Because it says all of a sudden, the city engineer or the city engineer's office is sort of in charge of policing all of this. So how does that play out exactly?
It's a good question, and I think it's something that we're going to have to sort of grow into because this is new for us.
Yeah.
I think that in a lot of cases, other municipalities, and probably the way it's going to start out here is it's going to be more of a reactive type of program than something that we're actively going out and looking. So it's going to be, if we notice something, or if we get a tip from someone that there's a spill or something, what we would do is identify that spill. We've got mapping of our entire storm drainage system. So if we see something coming out of a pipe down by, let's say, Memorial Boulevard, we can use our mapping and trace the system upstream to go back and try to find, okay, where was the source of that pollutant? So that would be the first part of it. Then trying to figure out, okay, who was responsible for that discharge? Are they somebody that can be identified or found? Or can we locate the source, go in and, search a property or take a look around and see if we can figure out a way to get that discharge to stop? So I think initially it's going to be a very reactive sort of thing. There is a potential, if we have the resources, to have a more active program where we're actually going out and checking out different parts of our storm drain system throughout the year, looking for discharges. And really our public works staff does that now. They clean out drainage inlets and other things. They're getting training to identify those sorts of things. They're going to basically be our eyes out in the field to help us. But I'd say it is a bit of a work in progress, trying to figure out how we're going to do this.
How much knowledge does the city have now as it relates to illicit discharges, or how much is the city able to pay attention to that?
Not as much as the state would like us to.
Clearly.
It's the usual problem of manpower and just having the resources to really operate an
Sure.
active program like this. We do yearly monitoring of certain outfalls, places where our storm drain system dumps into a stream or into a channel. The state requires us to do that. So we can keep an eye on things a bit through that program. Every 3 years, we have to go around and inspect every one of the stormwater management basins or facilities. So our inspectors, when they're doing those inspections, they can sort of keep an eye out for that sort of thing. Our code enforcement staff, they're out in the neighborhoods every day, and they're another set of eyes to help us try to, identify these things. But it's a huge undertaking because we have more than 100 miles of storm drainage pipes in the city. Most of them are out of sight, out of mind. And if something would get dumped into a drainage inlet or a catch basin somewhere, it's going to be very difficult to quickly identify where it came from and try to find a responsible party.
What do you envision as an educational component to this in terms of getting the word out to the general public?
Well, I think it's important for people to realize what the state considers to be a pollutant, because there are certain things that people may not really associate with stormwater pollution.
Yeah, they might not even think that it would come into play. Not that.
And an example is, in the state's eyes, let's say that you had an office building and your janitor was mopping the floors down and cleaning them up. They've got a bucket full of dirty, soapy water. In the state's eyes, you can't pour that down a storm drain or into a floor drain that's connected to the storm drainage system. That really needs to get dumped into the wastewater system, so it goes to the treatment plant and is treated.
Right.
So that's one example of something where people may not even think twice about dumping a bucket of water out into the street, but really in the state's eyes, that's not something that we want to encourage.
Yeah, no question. And that's the problem right there. As you said, people just might be unaware. So, we'll work on that.
Yeah, I think that we need to get a list out so that people can see what things in the state's eyes are prohibited activities. And I think we also need to talk up alternatives for them. Okay, if you've got waste oil or you've got...
what do you do with it?
Right.
If you can't do this,
right,
where does it go?
So we do have some information already on our website. It's actually under the trash and recycling section that talks about certain materials, how you can properly dispose of them. The other thing that we're trying to get off the ground, again, that would be paid out of the Stormwater Fund, is a household hazardous chemical program where residents maybe have some cans of old paint, or they've got some solvents or something that they want to get rid of. We're trying to get the program set up with waste management, that those residents can actually call waste management, schedule a day, and waste management staff will come and pick that material up and safely dispose of it. So
that would be convenient.
It is, and we're working on that. There's some, it turns out there's some problems. Waste management has had some difficulty getting the proper permits to operate a program like that. So they are still working through that. We still plan on doing that. We want to do it. It just isn't there yet.
Let's talk about the stormwater protection program a little bit, which was your second item on the agenda.
Right.
And certainly this has been a little bit of a work in progress. You outlined where it came from and sort of where we are now. Can you kind of characterize to this point how this has played out in terms of the way that perhaps you thought that it might, or maybe some things that you've learned to this juncture?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a learning experience for the city. I've probably been the most involved out of the engineering staff in working on this. I would say that, to be honest, I think that I was a bit surprised that there wasn't or hasn't been more pushback from the residents, the people that are getting these stormwater charges. because it is another charge, and especially
Yeah.
now with inflation where it is and gas prices, every dollar is important. But I think that we did a fairly good job as we were developing the program of trying to explain to people why it's important and point out some of the benefits to them. I think the curb replacement program is, a huge benefit to the residents. It used to be 5 years ago, out of the blue, we would send them a notice saying you need to repair 35 feet of your curb, and that ends up being thousands of dollars that people were not budgeting for.
Right.
So at least now they don't need to worry about that. And I really think in talking with the residents that I've talked to, deep down, I think that people do want to do what's right for the environment. And I think that they do understand that clean water and trying to improve water quality is something that we should all do, and we all play a part in that. And I think that there's been actually more buy-in on the idea that it's a citywide burden that everyone has to help carry a portion of. So I've been pleasantly surprised that people have been as accepting of the fee as they have.
What type of a pride element do you think there is, or is there one for people, given the fact that we've heard some of the difficulties that, surrounding municipalities have had, surrounding states have had with this, and we seem to have gotten out in front of it a little bit. I mean, is there any of that as a collective that perhaps, even though it's costing a few more bucks, as you said, doing the right thing and doing the right thing as one, maybe brings everyone together a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that when people step back and they think about what we're trying to accomplish with this program and what its purpose is, I have not met anyone yet that said this is a ridiculous idea because why do we need to clean up our streams, or why do we need to improve water quality? I think that people understand that this world is facing a lot of challenges, and our environment is facing a lot of challenges. And I think that they deep down realize that they're part of this big ecosystem, and they have a role, a responsibility to play in trying to preserve it or improve it. So I think there's some of that. We've tried to do a good job of getting the word out on projects that we have been successful on, and some of the partnerships we have. Just the other week, there was a proclamation for the Antietam-Conkajig Watershed Alliance. They do stream cleanups with us and tree planting, and they are very good at getting the public involved in things. And I think that the more we can do visible activities like that involve the public, I think that helps to educate and gets people excited about them.
How do you decide what projects to do? I mean, I think some of them are pretty obvious, but then there are other ones that are kind of on the periphery, and it's like, wow, that was interesting. So how do you come up with those?
Sure. Well, unfortunately, the whole genesis of the stormwater fee is the permit that we got from the state and the requirements that are in that permit. We have to either eliminate or provide management for 20% of the impervious area in the city. And the cost to do that level of management is significant. It's probably, depending on, with costs are rising now, so I'm not exactly sure what they would be, but probably $15 to $20 million. And the state wanted us to try to have all these projects done by the end of 2025, which is not really realistic. I don't think we're going to make that goal. So that's always something, that's probably the primary thing we look at in trying to evaluate projects.
Sure.
Because certain projects, we earn credits by doing certain types of projects, and really, we try to look for the most bang for the buck in these projects. The more credits that we can earn in the state's eyes, the better the project is, the more we are, I guess, wisely spending these dollars. So that's a big part of it. But then there are other types of projects, some of these neighborhood storm drainage improvement projects. They don't really earn us credit with the state, but it addresses problems with our system that impact, that if it's not working well now, it impacts the residents. And so we have a duty to try to use these funds to improve those situations as well.
I'd like to have you talk a little bit about the homeowner incentives. You mentioned those during the meeting, didn't really have a chance to elaborate too much on those, but
Yeah.
can you kind of maybe give a few examples of those that are out there and where people can go to find out more?
Sure. It's a little bit, it can be a little bit difficult for homeowners to think, okay, what can I do to address stormwater management on my property? But there are some simple things, or fairly simple things, that they can do. One is install a rain barrel. Catch some of that water that's coming out of your downspout and use it for irrigation, because the more of that water that you're retaining and using and keeping on your property, the less that gets into our system. It's not running off.
Yeah.
It's not burdening our stormwater system. They can install what they call a rain garden, which is basically a sort of a landscaped depression in their yard, direct the stormwater discharges into it, and they sort of fill up. They're usually pretty shallow. They'll fill up a little bit, but they'll hold that water and let it infiltrate down into the ground. And actually, the landscaping plants will help to uptake some of the pollutants that are in the stormwater, pull them out of the system. Those are probably the two examples that we see the most doing something like that. But there are others. The incentive program also will partner with people if they want to, let's say, replace their asphalt driveway with permeable pavers, which, again, they're helping to cut down on the runoff, minimize how much water and pollutants is actually leaving their property. So there is a cost-sharing benefit for that. The incentive program covers conservation planting. So if you happen to be in a situation where you're near a stream, or you've got maybe a larger lot and there's a portion of it that's probably not out along the street, but maybe in your rear yard, where you can create a buffer strip, a planted buffer strip, or an area, sort of let it go back to nature, more of a natural thing that you're not spending time mowing the grass back there. You're letting it grow up a bit. There's cost sharing for that. There are a couple other incentives that the Conservation District, different practices that they recognize as being something that they can support and partially fund. To get more information on that, a couple sources. One is on the city's website under the Stormwater Protection Program. There is a credit manual on there that explains how homeowners can earn credits that would reduce their stormwater bill, but it also talks about the incentive program, at least to a certain extent. But probably a better source of information, we are partnering with the Washington County Conservation District, and they actually have a pilot program, and they have literature set up to share with homeowners. I think that the way they're operating the program is they will make an appointment, they will come out and meet with the homeowners, they'll look at their property and try to figure out, okay, out of this menu of potential things that they could do, what makes the most sense, and then they can talk about, here's how much the city would be able to share in the cost of doing that.
And that's free?
The consultation is free, yes.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh. Anything else that you wanted to cover on either of these topics, illicit discharge or the stormwater protection program?
I think that's basically it. I think that the message in Maryland statewide is that these stricter regulations are here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
They may even get stricter over the years. I know that there's actually a big focus now at the Maryland Department of the Environment to deal with resiliency and the impact of climate change on certain systems. A good example is the continued flooding that they've had at Ellicott City, or even the flooding that we had at Clear Spring a couple of years ago. These really intense thunderstorms that sort of come out of nowhere, dump a lot of water very quickly and cause problems. The state is really trying to focus on, as the climate seems to be changing, it seems like these types of events are becoming more frequent. And they're trying to come up with systems and plans to try to deal with those changes. So that's going on. I'm actually attending a meeting tomorrow, a workshop meeting with Washington County and Maryland Department of the Environment, just to talk generally about our stormwater program, the county's stormwater program, and how we can all sort of work together to try to meet a common goal. So there's a lot going on, and I think that I don't think that this issue is going away. If anything, I think it's going to come more to the forefront in the future.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. Jim, appreciate all of the education. I don't know about the excitement part of it, but very educational.
Me either.
So I appreciate your time.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thanks to Jim Bender. Thanks to you for watching, and I'll see you next time. For now, that's a wrap.